He said he needed space to save the company. He said the move to Austin was temporary. But the first declined credit card revealed a much crueler truth. I didn't just discover he was living in Miami with another woman. I discovered he'd financed that luxury lifestyle by utterly destroying mine, and that's when I made sure he didn't have a dollar left. From the outside, we were the Boulder power couple, the successful 34-year-old entrepreneur and her charismatic tech CEO husband. My pastry shop, the Gilded Crumb, wasn't just doing well, it was a phenomenon. We had write-ups in food magazines. We had lines out the door every single weekend. Our minimalist, steel and glass house in the foothills was supposed to be the quiet sanctuary where we celebrated that success. Instead, it had become a cold, silent stage for my husband's anxiety. Lately, Marcus was more married to his phone than to me. He'd pace the living room, the blue light of the screen illuminating the tight line of his jaw, his thumb scrolling endlessly. He was 38, the brilliant head of Aperture Solutions, and he was drowning, or so he told me. The pressure is just insane. Ilara, he'd sigh, rubbing the bridge of his nose without looking up from the screen. You don't understand what a Series B funding round is like. It's not like baking. This is the big league. I'd feel the familiar hot sting of resentment. The Gilded Crumb was paying our mortgage, had been for 6 months, but to him, it was just my cute hobby. I know it's a lot, Marcus, I'd say, trying to keep my voice soft, trying not to be another source of pressure. But you're killing yourself. You barely sleep. Sleep is a luxury I can't afford. He'd snap, and I'd retreat. The distance between us was becoming a physical ache. Then, the first concrete clue appeared. I was reviewing our joint credit card statement, the one I paid off every month with bakery profits, and a charge stuck out. $400, a boutique hotel in Miami. My stomach twisted. Hey, I called to him later that night, trying to sound casual. Did you book a hotel in Miami for something I just saw a charge? He didn't miss a beat. He barely looked up from his laptop. Oh, that. Yeah. Had to send one of the research guys down there. Some potential investors have a base there. Just market research. Market research. It sounded thin. For Aperture. Yes, Ilara, for Aperture, he said, his voice laced with the condescending patience he used when I questioned him about real business. Don't worry about it. It's a corporate expense. But it felt wrong. It wasn't the money. It was the lie. I could feel it. A few nights later, he finally closed his laptop and looked at me. The silence in the room felt heavy, suffocating. I can't breathe in here, he said suddenly, his voice flat, my heart hammered. What do you mean? Is it the house? It's everything, he said, gesturing vaguely. This pressure. I feel like I'm being suffocated. I need space to think, to focus, to save this company. I can't do that here. I felt the panic rise, the desperate need to fix it, to pull him back. Okay, I said, my voice trembling slightly. Okay, let's take a vacation. Let's go to Telluride for a week. Just us. We can turn off our phones. We can just be... He laughed, a short, bitter sound. A vacation. That's your answer for everything, isn't it? Go bake a croissant. I'm talking about the collapse of my life's work, and you're offering me a ski trip. That's not fair, Marcus. What's not fair, he said, standing up, is me having to carry this entire burden alone while you play in your little shop. The cruelty of it winded me. I had nothing to say to that. I just watched him pace. He stopped at the window, looking out at the dark mountains. I'm moving to Austin, he said. I blinked. What like? We're moving. No, I'm moving. He turned to face me, his expression unreadable, cold. There's a tech incubator there, a program. It's the only shot I have left. I need to go. I need to focus, with no distractions. Distractions, I whispered. I'm a distraction. This he said, waving his hand between us. Our life. It's a distraction right now. I can't be the husband you want and save my company at the same time. He walked over to me, and for a second I thought he might touch me, might hold me. Instead, he just looked down at me. It's just for a few months. Ilara, it's temporary. It's to save us. The words hit me like physical blows. Austin, temporary. To save us. It felt like the floor had dropped out from beneath me. Austin, I stammered, the room suddenly feeling too bright, too sharp. Marcus, what are you talking about? You can't just leave. This isn't you. We don't make decisions like this. We talk about things. I reached for his arm, but he flinched, pulling away as if my touch burned him. That's the entire problem, Ilara, he said, his voice dropping to a cruel, flat calm. We talk. You feel. You need to process. I don't have time for that. I'm trying to save my company, and all this emotion. It's a distraction I cannot afford right now. A distraction. My voice cracked. My God, Marcus, I'm your wife. I'm not a line item on your balance sheet you can just cut. Right now, I need you to be, he said. That's when I saw them, lined up perfectly by the front door, next to the floor-to-ceiling window. Luggage. Not just his worn-out Samsonite carry-on he'd had for 10 years. It was a brand-new, matching set of Toomey. Matte black, hard shell, gleaming under the recessed lighting. There were 3 pieces. You're already packed, I whispered. It wasn't a question. This wasn't a discussion. It was an announcement. He had been planning this. I'm leaving tonight. My flight is at 10:30. My gaze fixed on the largest suitcase. It was easily over $1,000. The whole set was probably 3, maybe 4,000. A cold dread, sharper than the panic, began to seep into my veins. Where did you get that? I asked, my voice hollow. What? The luggage, Marcus. Where did you get it? I know for a fact our joint account is low because I just paid the quarterly taxes for the crumb. His answer was too fast, too polished. Corporate expense. The investors expect me to look the part. Investors, I repeated, the word tasting like ash. Right. I was shattering. The pieces of our life falling around me, but the baker in me, the organizer, the woman who ran things, fought for control. I clung to logistics because the emotion was too big to handle. What about the house? I asked, my voice shaking. The mortgage payment is due on the 1st. The utilities are all in your name. What about... He held up a hand, cutting me off. I'll handle everything from afar. I'll transfer what's needed. Ilara, please, just don't make this more complicated than it already is. Complicated. I was the complication. His wife of 9 years, the woman who had fronted him the seed money for Aperture from her own savings, was a complication. A notification chimed on his phone. He looked at it, then slipped it into the pocket of his expensive jacket. My ride is here. He walked to the door, grabbing the handles of the 2 largest suitcases. He didn't look at me. He didn't say, I love you. He didn't say, I'm sorry. Marcus, I pleaded. One last time, my voice pathetic even to my own ears. Don't do this, please. Whatever it is, we can fix it. He paused at the door, his back to me. I'm doing this to fix it, Ilara. You'll see. He opened the door, and I saw the headlights of the waiting car. It wasn't a regular Uber. It was an Uber Black, a sleek, black SUV. The driver got out and immediately began loading the Toomey bags into the back. Marcus got into the passenger seat. He never once looked back. I watched the red taillights disappear down our long driveway, swallowed by the darkness. I stood there for I don't know how long, my hand still on the doorframe. The silence of the house was deafening. I sank to the cold tile of the entryway, my legs giving out completely. I pulled my knees to my chest and finally, I broke. The sobs were violent, tearing out of my throat, echoing in the huge, empty space he had left behind. After an hour, or maybe it was just minutes, my tears slowed. I lifted my head, my eyes burning, and I saw it. On the console table by the door, where it always sat, a silver frame, a picture of us from our honeymoon in Italy, grinning, covered in pasta sauce. He hadn't even taken our picture. The first few days were a fog of flour and shame. I kept The Gilded Crumb open, moving on autopilot. The routine was the only thing holding me together, laminating the croissant dough at 5 a.m., piping the eclairs, checking the inventory. The familiar warm smell of cardamom and yeast, usually my greatest comfort, now just felt like a layer in a life that was suddenly fraudulent. My staff knew something was wrong. I'm meticulous. I'm present. But I kept drifting off mid-sentence, staring at the wall. "Are you okay?" My head baker, Sarah, asked, her eyes full of concern. I forced a tight smile. "Just tired. Marcus is traveling for work. A big project." The lie tasted like acid. The humiliation was a physical weight. How do you tell people your brilliant, charismatic husband didn't just leave? He fled, that he found his wife, his home, and his life suffocating. I felt like a fool. On the third night, I was sitting alone in the cavernous, silent house, staring at the empty space where his briefcase used to be. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I picked up my phone and called Maya. She's my best friend since college, and she's a shark, a financial attorney in Denver. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, you. What's up?" I opened my mouth, but what came out was a dry, racking sob that I'd been swallowing for 72 hours. "Ilara." Her voice changed instantly, shedding the casual friendliness and turning sharp, professional. "Ilara, what happened? Are you hurt?" "He's gone. Maya." I wept, the words tearing out of me. "He's gone. Marcus left me. He said he was moving to Austin for a few months. He said I was a distraction and he needed space to save the company." There was a long, cold pause on the other end of the line. She didn't offer sympathy. She didn't say, "Oh, honey." "Ilara," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "You listen to me. Hang up this phone right now. Go to your computer and check every single one of your bank accounts. Joint, personal, all of them. Check your credit cards immediately." Her urgency terrified me, cutting straight through the grief and replacing it with a new, cold dread. Why he said he'd handle the mortgage. "It's due today. The first, check. It, now," she commanded, "and call me right back." I hung up, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock my laptop. The screen illuminated my tear-streaked face. I pulled up our main bank portal, the mortgage payment. It was sitting there, a big red past due glaring at me. "He forgot," I whispered, my heart hammering. He got busy and he forgot." I clicked the Make Payment button. Our joint checking account, the one I used for household bills, should have had plenty. The screen refreshed. A small red banner. Failed insufficient funds. My breath hitched. No, 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 no. That was impossible. I'd transferred $20,000 from savings just last week to cover the mortgage and the quarterly property taxes. I tried the payment again. Insufficient funds. A strangled sound escaped my throat. Panicked. I clicked on our joint savings account. This was my account. This was where the profits from The Gilded Crumb went. This was our emergency fund, our future, the money I had bled and sweat for, baking since before dawn for 6 years. It should have had, I knew the number by heart, nearly $200,000. The page loaded. Available balance, $812.45. I stopped breathing. It wasn't real. It was a glitch, a server error. I refreshed the page, my finger hitting the key over and over. $812.45. $812.45. I felt the blood drain from my face. My fingers fumbled as I clicked transaction history. It wasn't a glitch. It was a massacre, a transfer. $50,000, 3 weeks ago. A transfer. $75,000, 2 weeks ago. A withdrawal. $20,000. Last week. A transfer. $40,000, 4 days ago. It was a systematic, deliberate draining of everything I had. My eyes darted to the transfer details, searching for where it went. It wasn't his personal account. It was an account I had never seen before. The label on every single transfer was the same. APTR consulting fees. Aperture. His company. He had siphoned almost $200,000 of my money, of our savings, and disguised it as consulting fees. He hadn't just left me. He had emptied me. I don't remember calling Maya back. I don't remember the 20-minute drive from my house to the Gilded Crumb. I just remember standing in the dark, silent bakery, the air thick with the smell of old coffee and vanilla. And then Maya was there. She'd broken every speed limit getting from Denver to Boulder, her keys still in her hand, her blazer thrown on over a tank top. She didn't hug me. She wasn't my friend right now. She was my lawyer. Her face was granite. "My office," I whispered. We locked the bakery door and huddled under the single fluorescent light in my tiny back office, the mixer bowls and racks of sheet pans standing like ghosts around us. "Okay," she said, pushing aside stacks of invoices and slamming her laptop onto my desk. "Give me every password, bank logins, his email, your email, the joint accounts, the credit cards, everything." For the next 4 hours, the only sounds were the clicking of her keyboard and the rustle of papers as I dug through our filing cabinet, pulling out tax returns and mortgage statements. The numb shock was receding, replaced by a vibrating, high-frequency panic. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me," Maya muttered, sometime around 2 a.m. "What?" My voice was a dry rasp. "He opened 3 new American Express Platinum cards," she said. Her eyes narrowed at the screen. 3 of them, back in June. "What? No, we don't," I said, confused. "We just have the joint visa." "You do now," she said, turning the screen toward me. "One in his name, one in your name, Alara, and one for Aperture Solutions." "I never signed anything. I never applied for that." "He didn't need you to. He had your social. He probably e-signed it." She clicked on View Statements. My stomach physically lurched. I gripped the edge of the desk. The charges were staggering, and they weren't in Austin. They were almost exclusively in Miami. "Nobu," I read aloud, my voice trembling. $600. 2 nights later. $800. What is Balenciaga? $4,000. 4,000. My eyes scanned the list, feeling sicker by the second. First-class airfare on American JFK to Miami. First class, LAX to Miami. He wasn't even flying from Denver. "He hasn't been to Austin at all," I whispered. The hotel charge I'd seen, the one he'd dismissed as market research. It was just the beginning. "He was in Miami last week," Maya said, her voice dangerously low. "While he was pacing your living room, telling you he was suffocating." The panic was turning into a hot, blinding rage. Maya was already back on the main bank portal, digging into the APTR consulting fees. "This is the key," she said. "This is how he moved the bulk of it. He needed a legal-looking vehicle." While she worked on that, I logged into our shared email account, the one he'd set up for household bills and we never used. I scrolled through the junk, but a subject line from 3 weeks ago caught my eye. "Lease confirmation address, South Beach." "Maya," I said, my finger shaking as I pointed at the screen. "Open that!" She clicked. It was an executed lease agreement. 12 months. A penthouse apartment in one of those gleaming glass towers in South Beach. My eyes scanned the details, my blood running cold. "He leased it for a full year," I choked out. "Worse," Maya said, scrolling to the signature page. Look at the payment terms. He paid the first 6 months and the deposit up front. $90,000. Paid in full. Last week. He had looked me in the eye and told me he needed a temporary incubator in Austin, just days after he wired $90,000 of my bakery's profits to secure a Miami penthouse. I'm going to be sick, I whispered. Not yet, Maya said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. I'm in the Delaware State Registry. APTR Consulting is a shell, registered 8 weeks ago. She was cross-referencing the bank transfers with the corporate filing. The articles of incorporation list 2 officers. She paused. Marcus Thorne, President, and Sloan Rivington, Vice President. Who? The name meant nothing to me. Who is Sloan Rivington? Maya was already typing the name into a social media search bar. An Instagram profile appeared. It was private. Sloan Rivington, Maya read. 25. Model. Lifestyle. But we didn't need to see the posts. The profile picture said everything. It was a young woman, impossibly beautiful and artificial, posing on the deck of a yacht. She was wearing a bikini that looked like it was made of string, laughing and holding a glass of champagne. She was leaning back against a man who was mostly out of frame. All you could see was his arm, wrapped tightly around her waist, a tanned arm, and on the wrist, a very specific, very expensive watch. My breath hitched in my throat. It was a Panerai Luminor, brushed steel, black face, with the unmistakable, patented crown guard. I knew it instantly. I had spent 3 months saving for it. I had given it to Marcus for his 35th birthday. That's his watch, I whispered, the last bit of air leaving my body. Oh my God, Maya, that's his watch. I stared at the screen, at my watch on his wrist, wrapped around her tiny waist. The image burned itself onto my retinas. The penthouse, the first-class tickets, the Balenciaga, the lie. It all clicked into place with a sickening, final snap. He's been living a double life, I whispered, the words thick with bile. He's been lying to me for how long? Maya looked at me, her face pale under the harsh office light. She closed the Instagram tab, her expression grim. Alara, this is worse than a double life. He didn't just spend your money. He used you. What do you mean? I asked, my voice hollow. He drained our savings. He took my money. How can it be worse? Because APTR Consulting isn't the only shell company, she said, her fingers flying. He didn't just drain your savings. He drained his own company first. I'm looking at Aperture Solutions right now. She turned her laptop back to me. It wasn't a bank statement. It was a public filing, a Chapter 7 bankruptcy petition. Aperture Solutions filed for bankruptcy 6 months ago, Maya said flatly. It's insolvent. Dead. The assets are being liquidated to pay creditors. I stared, uncomprehending. But the Series B funding, the pressure, the investors, all of it, a lie, Maya said, her voice sharp. Every late night, every frantic phone call, every complaint about saving the company, it was theater. He was covering his tracks. The company was already gone. He was just performing. The implications hit me. So the money he was spending, it wasn't investor money. It wasn't company money. It was just your money. Maya finished for me. The $200,000 from your savings was just the start. He was broke. He needed new capital, and he found it. What do you mean, Alara? He used the gilded crumb, a new, ice-cold fear, entirely different from the personal betrayal, washed over me. He can't. The bakery is mine. It's an S-corp, solely in my name. Did you ever add him as an officer for banking purposes? Anything. No, I said, my voice rising in panic. Never. I was adamant about that. It's mine. Good, she said, but she didn't look relieved. She was digging into a different portal now, one I didn't recognize. He couldn't use the company directly, then. So he did something else. She went quiet for a full minute, just reading, her eyes scanning lines of text so fast I couldn't follow. What is it, Maya? You're scaring me. She finally stopped. She took a deep breath and looked at me. It was the look she'd given me when my mother died, a look of profound, unavoidable pain. He used your name, she said, her voice barely a whisper. He used your social security number. What? About 3 months ago, someone filed an application for a government loan under the name of the Gilded Crumb. My blood turned to ice. I never applied for a loan. I don't need a loan. We're profitable. We're thriving. I know, she said. But he did. He applied for an SBA loan, specifically, an economic injury disaster loan. She pointed to the screen. He claimed the Gilded Crumb suffered severe revenue loss due to, I don't know, a downturn, a disaster. It doesn't matter. He falsified your profit and loss statements. He falsified my books. He had to get the money. And he did. Elara. They approved it. I couldn't speak. I just stared at her. He took out a loan for $750,000, Maya said, her voice shaking with rage for the first time. He took it out in your name, using your business as collateral. He forged your electronic signature on the documents. I slid off the stool, my legs giving out. I landed hard on the cold linoleum floor. $750,000, a federal loan. Fraud. My God, I gasped. The air punched out of me. I'm ruined. The government. They're going to think I did this. They'll take the bakery. They'll take everything. We're not going to let that happen, Maya said, her voice turning to steel. But Elara, you need to understand what this means. This isn't a divorce. This is a federal crime. She was still digging, her face a mask of fury. And here it is, the final piece. She pointed to the bank records for the loan dispersal. The entire amount, $750,000. It hadn't sat in my business account for more than an hour. It was immediately wired out. Where did it go? I whispered from the floor. To the APTR consulting account. No, Maya said. He was smarter than that. He created a brand new entity. This one is called Lifestyle Ventures, LLC. She pulled up the filing for that too, also registered in Delaware. Guess who the co-owners are? I already knew. I didn't even need to see the screen. Marcus Thorne, I said, my voice dead. And Sloan Rivington. She finished. The pieces assembled themselves with brutal clarity. He hadn't just left me for another woman. He hadn't just stolen my savings to pay for his mistress. He had systematically, deliberately, and criminally destroyed his own company, then used my identity and my successful business to defraud the United States government out of $750,000. He didn't leave me because he was suffocating. He left me to finance her lifestyle by committing a felony in my name. I stayed on the floor of my office for a long time. The sun started to rise, painting the sky outside the bakery window in mocking shades of pink and orange. Maya had made coffee, the strong, sludgy kind we used to drink during college finals. I just stared at the wall. I was completely, terrifyingly numb. This wasn't a divorce. Divorces were about dividing assets, about custody, about sadness. This was a criminal investigation. I wasn't a wife who had been left. I was a mark who had been hit. Every interaction from the last 6 months replayed in my mind, but with a new, horrifying filter. Every complaint about pressure. Every sigh about being suffocated. Every time he'd called my bakery a cute hobby. It wasn't vulnerability. It was psychological warfare. He had been planting the seeds, building his narrative, creating the justification for his exit so that when he finally pulled the trigger, I'd be too busy feeling sorry for him to look at the bank statements. Maya was quiet, pacing the small office. I'm calling David, she finally said. David Kincaid. He was a federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York. Financial crimes. He's in private practice in Denver now. She was already dialing, her phone pressed hard against her ear. He's the only person I trust with this. She put the call on speaker. A man's voice, sharp and awake even at this hour, filled the room. Kincaid. Maya laid out the entire story in less than 3 minutes. The shell companies, the forged SBA loan, the wire transfers to Lifestyle Ventures, the Miami penthouse. She was precise, cold, and factual. There was a long silence on the line. Then Kincaid spoke, and his voice was devoid of all sympathy. It was the voice of a surgeon diagnosing a terminal illness. "Ilara," he said, "not Ms. Thorne. Maya has my full attention, but you need to listen to me very carefully. Your husband hasn't just ruined your marriage. He has purposefully and maliciously destroyed your credit. He has implicated your legitimate business in multiple felonies. As of this moment, you are liable for that $750,000 loan. You have to stop thinking like a scorned wife and start acting like a victim of a capital crime." I flinched, the words hitting me harder than any of Marcus's insults. "This is what you're going to do," Kincaid continued, his voice a relentless, rapid-fire instruction. "You will not call him. You will not text him. You will not file for divorce. That is the last thing you will do. For the next 48 hours, you are an archivist. You will gather every piece of evidence, every bank statement, every forged e-signature on that SBA application, every email where he mentioned Aperture's Series B funding. Print it all, PDF it all, create a timeline. Your only job is to build the case." The fog in my head started to clear, replaced by his instructions. He had given me a job. For the next 2 days, I didn't sleep. I barely ate. Maya and I worked from her office in Denver, our faces lit by the blue glow of the monitors. We were a machine. I printed the wire transfer confirmation for the $90,000 penthouse down payment. I printed the Amex statements filled with $1,000 dinners at Nobu. I found the digital signature page for the SBA loan, my name, my social security number, but the IP address wasn't from our house. It was from a cafe in Miami. He'd signed it while he was there on market research. On the afternoon of the second day, Maya, who had been quietly working a different angle, let out a low hiss. "What is it?" I asked, not looking up from a spreadsheet of the APTR consulting withdrawals. "I'm in," she said. "In where?" "Sloan Rivington's Instagram. It's private, but one of my summer associates. She follows everyone, and Sloan's account isn't that private." She turned her monitor. I had only seen the profile picture. Now I was seeing the entire feed. It was a deluge of filtered, ostentatious wealth, balconies in South Beach, champagne bottles, designer dogs. And then I saw it, a post from 24 hours ago. It was a mirror selfie. Sloan, pout-lipped, in what I recognized as the bathroom of the penthouse. On her arm, dangling casually, was a brand-new Hermes Birkin bag, a bright, screaming, obnoxious orange, a $40,000 status symbol. My eyes drifted to the caption. Just 6 words. "Building our empire boss life." Empire. I thought I had been devastated. I thought I had been angry. I had been wrong. The grief I'd been carrying, the deep, aching sorrow of my broken heart, didn't just fade. It evaporated. It was burned away in a single white-hot flash. It was replaced by something new, something cold and hard and sharp. It was a perfect crystalline rage. He hadn't just left me. He hadn't just stolen from me. He was bragging about it. He had taken my life's work, my money, my name, and turned it into an orange purse for his 25-year-old girlfriend. He had left me to finance her lifestyle by stealing my future. I looked at Maya. My face felt like it was carved from stone. "Okay," I said, my voice clear and steady for the first time in a week. "We have the evidence. What does Kincaid want us to do first?" The rage was no longer a fire. It was a machine. Kincaid's voice over the speakerphone had become my new reality. a set of cold, precise instructions that I followed to the letter. My grief was a luxury I could no longer afford. My job now was to be the perfect victim. "We do not file for divorce," Kincaid had ordered, his voice sharp. "A divorce petition is a declaration of war. It shows your hand. We are not declaring war. We are launching a surgical strike. They won't know they're under attack until their supply lines are cut." So, we began the counteroffensive. It was a three-pronged attack, methodical and silent. Prong one was the hardest. It was the one that made it real, concrete, and irreversible. Maya drove me to the Boulder police station. I clutched a thick manila envelope filled with our 2 days of work, my knuckles white. I felt like an imposter, walking into a police station to report my own husband. But then I pictured Sloane's orange Birkin bag bought with my stolen future, and the hesitation evaporated. I sat across from a detective named Rivas. He looked overworked, his eyes already skeptical, clearly expecting a domestic dispute. "This is a civil matter, a husband-wife argument over money," he asked, leaning back in his chair. "No, detective," I said, my voice surprising me with its steadiness. I pushed the envelope across the desk. "This is a criminal matter. Aggravated identity theft and federal bank fraud." I laid it out. The falsified SBA loan application for $750,000, the forged e-signature, the doctored profit and loss statements claiming my thriving bakery was on the verge of collapse. I showed him the wire transfer confirmation, the entire loan amount disappearing in one transaction to Lifestyle Ventures, LLC. I showed him the articles of incorporation for that shell company, listing Marcus Thorne and Sloane Rivington as the sole officers. His skepticism vanished. He sat up straight. He began to type. "He used your social security number, without your knowledge or consent, to obtain a federal loan." "Yes." "And he transferred those funds to this shell company." "Yes." I was calm. I was factual. I was a business owner who had discovered a catastrophic crime. When I walked out 2 hours later, I had it. A police report number, a tangible official weapon. Prong 2 was Kincaid's domain. He was, as he put it, ringing the bell at the Office of Inspector General. "The SBA's OIG hates this more than anyone," he'd explained. "It makes them look incompetent. They are auditors with badges, and they are vicious." He assembled our package, my sworn affidavit, the forged loan documents, the wire transfer receipts, the timeline. He sent it to a direct contact he had in the OIG's fraud division. He didn't just report a crime. He handed them a fully solved case, gift-wrapped. Prong 3 was mine. This was the one that made my hands shake. I had to call the bank that had so cheerfully approved a $750,000 fraudulent loan in my name. I sat in Maya's office, the number for the bank's corporate fraud department on a sticky note. "You can do this," Maya said, her hand on my shoulder. "You are not a wife. You are Alara Thorne, owner of the Gilded Crumb. You are shocked, you are terrified, and you have just discovered that your company's identity has been stolen." I dialed. I was transferred 3 times, my voice getting steadier with each hold. Finally, a woman with a no-nonsense voice answered. "Ms. Harris, Corporate Security and Fraud." "My name is Alara Thorne," I said, and I let the tremor I was feeling bleed into my voice. It wasn't difficult. I think my business has been used in a fraud. A serious fraud. I've just been to the police." That got her attention. "Ma'am, what is the nature of the fraud?" "I just discovered. My husband, I think he took out an SBA loan in my company's name. A huge one. It says $750,000. I never signed anything. I've been here in Boulder. My business is successful. I just found out." I heard the rapid, panicked clicking of a keyboard. "I see a loan disbursed to the Gilded Crumb 3 months ago." "That's it," I said, letting my voice crack. "I have a police report. Case number BPD 25089. I just spoke with Detective Rivas. My God, am I responsible for this? He forged my signature. He stole my identity." The banker's tone shifted instantly. It was no longer inquisitive, it was defensive. "Ms. Thorne, if what you are alleging is true—" "I have an affidavit," I cut in, using Kincaid's exact script. "I'm sending it to you right now, along with the police report. My attorney, David Kincaid, advised me to contact you immediately. My husband, he's in Miami. He's been wiring money to a shell company. He didn't just defraud me, he defrauded your bank." I had her. The moment I said defrauded your bank, the entire dynamic changed. The bank was now a co-victim. More importantly, the bank was now massively liable. They had failed to do their due diligence. They had approved a loan for $750,000 without ever speaking to the actual business owner. They were on the hook. "Ms. Thorne," she said, her voice now clipped and urgent, "we are opening an internal investigation effective immediately. This is a high-priority matter. Do not contact your husband." "I'm terrified," I whispered. "We will handle it," she said. As soon as I hung up, Maya let out a long, low whistle. She's not just investigating, she's covering the bank's ass. And the first step to covering their ass is to find that money. The final step felt almost anticlimactic, but it was just as critical. I went online and, one by one, placed a full credit freeze on my file with all three bureaus: TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. I was locking the gate after the horse had bolted, but I was making damn sure he couldn't come back for the rest of the stable. I shut my laptop. The office was dark. I felt hollowed out, exhausted. But for the first time in a week, I also felt something else: control. "So," I said to Maya, "we've poked all the beehives. Now," she said, a small, grim smile on her face, "we wait for the bees to sting." The wait wasn't a wait at all. It was a detonation. I'd gone home from Maya's office, my entire body vibrating with a toxic mix of terror and adrenaline. I thought I would have days, maybe weeks, of agonizing silence. The avalanche began in less than 24 hours. Kincaid had been right. The systems I had poked weren't just beehives. They were complex, interconnected, high-speed machines built for one thing: self-preservation. The first move was invisible to me, but Kincaid called to confirm it. "The flag is up," he said, his voice flat. "The SBA OIG has marked the loan as suspected fraud." He explained what that meant. It wasn't a memo in a file. It was a digital tripwire. That single flag instantly triggered a cascade of automated alerts, shooting my Social Security number and the loan details across a network of federal agencies. The government, slow and bureaucratic in person, was a ruthless, high-speed predator in the digital realm. But the bank was faster. They weren't just protecting the government, they were protecting themselves. They were the ones who had been asleep at the switch, who had handed over $750,000 on the basis of a forged e-signature and an IP address in Miami. Their reaction wasn't surgical. It was a nuclear bomb. In a desperate, frantic attempt to secure the assets and contain their own liability, the bank's fraud department did exactly what Kincaid predicted they would. They didn't just freeze the SBA loan account. They didn't just freeze the shell company. They took a sledgehammer and brought it down on everything. They placed an immediate, system-wide administrative freeze on every single account associated with the compromised Social Security numbers, mine and Marcus's. This meant the old joint checking account, with its paltry $812, was locked. It meant Marcus's personal savings account was locked. It meant the ghost accounts for his bankrupt company, Aperture Solutions, were locked. And most critically, it meant the account for Lifestyle Ventures LLC, the piggy bank financing the Miami penthouse and the Balenciaga shopping sprees, was instantly frozen solid. But this was the move that saved me. The one move that separated my fate from his. The night we discovered the fraud, before we had even called the police, Maya had shoved her laptop in front of me. "This is what you do first," she'd said, "not as a wife, as a CEO." While she'd been on the phone with Kincaid, I had driven to a different bank. a small local Boulder credit union where I had no history. I walked in, my hands shaking but my voice steady, and I opened a new corporate account. I didn't open it with my social security number. I opened it using only the Gilded Crumbs employer identification number, the EIN. It was an account for the business, legally and financially separate from Alara Thorne, the identity theft victim. That night, from Maya's office, I had methodically transferred every single legitimate dollar from my old bank to this new, clean, insulated account. The payroll for my staff, the money for my flour and butter suppliers, the bakery's actual hard-won profits. My business, my real business, was a ghost. It was invisible. It was safe. I was at the bakery, elbow deep in brioche dough, the scent of yeast and butter filling the pre-dawn quiet. It was the only thing keeping me sane. My phone buzzed on the steel prep table, a harsh, vibrating sound that made me jump. I wiped the flour from my hands and looked. It was an email. An automated alert from my old bank. Subject: an important security update regarding your account. My blood ran cold. I clicked it. Dear customer, a temporary freeze has been placed on your account, ending in 4182, due to suspicious fraudulent activity detected by our security department. No transactions, including withdrawals or transfers, will be permitted at this time. We apologize for any inconvenience. I stared at the screen. Account 4182. It was our old joint checking account, the one he had drained. The email wasn't a problem. It was a confirmation. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. It felt alien, like I was stretching muscles I didn't know I had. This automated email wasn't for me. It was just the shrapnel from the explosion. I knew, with a chilling, absolute certainty, that this same email, this same freeze, had just landed on every account Marcus Thorne controlled. The tap was off. In a Miami penthouse, 2,000 miles away. The money had just stopped. 2,000 miles away. The ripples of my actions were just beginning to hit the shore. In Miami, the night was hot and sticky, but inside Carbone, the air was cool and thick with the smell of garlic and expensive wine. Marcus and Sloane were in a deep red, secluded booth, celebrating. They were celebrating the arrival of her new watch, an Audemars Piguet in rose gold, its bezel encrusted with diamonds. It had been delivered that afternoon, another trinket paid for by my name, my credit, my bakery. An empire, baby, Marcus said, his voice smooth and confident, holding up his glass of Barolo. He was a different man from the one who had paced my living room complaining of pressure. He was tanned, relaxed, and wearing a shirt I'd never seen before, one that probably cost $1,000. Sloane raised her glass, the diamonds on her new watch flashing under the dramatically low lighting. Our empire, she corrected, her voice a low purr. Boss life. They ate. The spicy rigatoni, the branzino. They ordered another bottle of wine, laughing as the waiter fussed over them. Marcus felt untouchable. He had done it. He had escaped his old, suffocating life and traded it in for this. He was smart. He was a winner. The waiter, impeccably discreet, finally placed the heavy leather billfold on the table. The bill was just over $3,000. Marcus didn't even look at the total. He just plucked his American Express Platinum card from his wallet and handed it over, already turning his attention back to Sloane. A few minutes later, the waiter returned. He was holding the card gingerly. "I am so sorry, sir," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "The card has been declined." Marcus laughed, a short, sharp sound of disbelief. "That's impossible. Run it again. Your machine is broken." "I've run it twice, sir." Sloane's painted-on smile faltered. She stopped admiring her wrist and looked at Marcus. "Fine," Marcus said, his annoyance rising. He was flushed. He snatched the Amex back and pulled out a different card, the Platinum card for Aperture Solutions. "Use this one." The waiter nodded, disappeared, and reappeared almost immediately. "Sir, I apologize. This one has also been declined." "What the hell is going on?" Marcus snapped, his voice no longer smooth. He fumbled in his wallet, his confidence evaporating, replaced by a hot, public humiliation. He pulled out the last card. The debit card for Lifestyle Ventures, LLC, the one linked directly to the $750,000. "This is a debit card," he said, his voice low and angry. "It's linked directly to our main account. It cannot be declined." The waiter took the card, ran it at the nearby station, and shook his head, his face pale. "Declined, sir. It says, insufficient funds." "Insufficient." Marcus stopped. The blood drained from his face. "Marcus," Sloane's voice was high, nervous. "Just pay the bill. People are starting to look." "Shut up," he hissed. He grabbed his phone, his thumb shaking as he tried to unlock it. He pulled up his banking app, the one that showed him the beautiful, growing balance of his new life. He stared at the screen. Lifestyle Ventures. LLC available balance, $0.00. Account frozen. Aperture Solutions. Available balance, $0.00. Account frozen. Marcus Thorne. Personal available balance, $0.00. Account frozen. Every single one. The entire empire. Gone. "No," he whispered, refreshing the app over and over. "No, no, no." He jammed the phone to his ear, frantically dialing the bank's 24-hour premium customer service line. His voice was unrecognizable, high and thin. "This is Marcus Thorne. My accounts are frozen. All of them. There has been a mistake. A massive mistake. You need to unlock them now." He listened, his body rigid, his face turning a sickly shade of gray. "What do you mean?" he stammered, his voice cracking. "What investigation, eh?" "A federal fraud investigation." "That's insane. I didn't—" "That's a business loan. My wife, she approved it. She's part of the business." He listened again, his eyes wide, his mouth hanging open in sheer terror. What? She reported it. She reported it as identity theft." Across the table, Sloane heard the word wife. Her eyes, which had been anxious, snapped into sharp, cold focus. The fantasy dissolved. She wasn't a co-founder. She was a mistress. "Wife," she hissed, her voice cutting through his panic. "You told me you were divorced. You told me it was finalized. You lied to me." "Sloane, be quiet. I am fixing this," Marcus pleaded, waving his hand at her, his eyes still wild. "You're fixing nothing," she spat. "You told me that money was yours. You told me you were a genius. You're just a common thief." She stood up, grabbing her tiny, expensive purse. "Sloane, wait," he panicked, reaching for her. "Don't leave me. Sit down." She looked at his hand, then at his terrified, pathetic face. She looked down at the glittering Audemars Piguet on her wrist, a final trophy. Then she looked back at him with pure reptilian contempt. "You're pathetic." She turned and walked out of the restaurant, her heels clicking on the marble floor, leaving Marcus Thorne alone in the booth, with a $3,000 unpaid bill and an empire that had vanished in the space of a single phone call. He must have scraped together his last few frequent flyer miles. 2 days after the accounts froze, he appeared. It was the peak of our Saturday rush, just after 1 p.m. The Gilded Crumb was packed. The bell on the door didn't just jingle, it was flung open, slamming against the wall with a crash that silenced the entire cafe. And there he was. He wasn't the slick, tanned tech CEO from Miami. He was the man I'd seen in our living room, but 1,000 times worse. His expensive shirt was wrinkled from a red-eye flight. His face was pale and puffy, and his eyes were wild with a desperate, cornered animal terror. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Ilara," he roared, his voice cracked, heads snapped toward him. Customers, holding lattes and pastries, froze. He spotted me behind the pastry case, where I was boxing a cake. "Ilara," he screamed again, storming past the line, shoving a table out of his way. "What the hell did you do? What did you do to me? You've ruined everything!" I carefully placed the lid on the box and handed it to my head baker. "Sarah." I didn't rush. I took off my apron, folded it, and placed it on the counter. Then I walked out from behind the counter to face him in the middle of my bakery. I was surprised by how calm I felt. There was no panic, no fear, just a vast, cold quiet. I reported an identity theft. "Marcus," I said, my voice clear enough to carry over his heavy breathing. "Identity theft." He sputtered, his face turning a blotchy red. "You can't do that. That was our money for our future. You had no right." He took a step toward me, his hands clenched, his body radiating a desperate, pathetic menace. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. "No." "Marcus," I said, and my voice was so cold it seemed to drop the temperature in the room. "It wasn't our money. It was a federal loan. A loan for $750,000 that you took out in my name, using my business. That isn't a marital dispute. That's fraud." He opened his mouth to scream again, to lunge. I don't know which, but the bell on the door jingled again, this time quietly. 2 men in unassuming jackets stepped inside. They didn't look at the pastry case. They looked right at Marcus. Kincaid had told me they would be close. "Marcus Thorne," the taller one asked, his voice calm but absolute. Marcus spun around, his face draining of all color. He went from rage to pure, abject terror in a millisecond. He knew. It was over. "You're under arrest," the detective said, already moving, pulling Marcus's hands behind his back with practiced efficiency. "You're being charged with federal bank fraud, aggravated identity theft, and wire fraud." The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a lock, a final, definitive click. "Ilara," he shrieked, his voice pathetic, his eyes begging me. "Ilara, please, tell them it's a misunderstanding. It was a loan. Tell them." They started to walk him out, one hand on each of his arms. He was stumbling, trying to look back at me. "Ilara, you can't let them do this. I'm your husband, Ilara." He was being led out past the entire line of customers, every single one of whom had their phone out, recording. His humiliation was total, captured from a dozen angles. As they pulled him through the doorway, his eyes met mine one last time. They weren't angry. They were just filled with a bottomless, begging desperation. I just watched him. I felt nothing. Not hatred, not pity, not even satisfaction. Just empty. The detectives put him in the back of an unmarked car and drove away. The cafe was dead silent. Every customer was staring at me. I turned back to my staff, who were clustered by the ovens, their eyes wide. I smoothed the front of my shirt. "Sorry for the interruption," I said, my voice returning to its normal, professional tone. "Sarah, can you please close that door? It's letting the cold air in. Thank you for listening to my story. Please comment below and let me know where you're listening from. I'd love to connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us extra support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.